My stepfamily treated me like a servant in the house my grandfather left me. I cooked, cleaned, and got blamed for everything, while they lived rent-free and erased every trace of my real family. But when I discovered the house was legally mine, I gave them 60 days to leave. What followed tore everything apart. Imagine finding out the house where you were treated like a servant was legally yours the entire time. I need to tell someone about this. I am 22 years old now, and everything has changed. It started when I was 7. My father died in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday evening. I remember the police officer at our door, my mother's scream, and the way the world seemed to tilt sideways. After that, it was just my mother and me. We lived in a small apartment that smelled like coffee and old books. My mother worked 2 jobs to keep us going. My grandfather, my father's father, helped us whenever he could. He was a carpenter who built beautiful wooden furniture in his garage workshop. When I turned 9, my grandfather made a decision that would change everything. He bought a large house on Oak Street with money he had saved for decades. It had 4 bedrooms, a big kitchen, and a yard with apple trees. He said we should all live together so my mother would not have to work so hard. What I did not know then was that my grandfather had put the house in my name. He set up something called a trust. The lawyer explained it to me years later. My grandfather wanted to make sure I would always have a home, no matter what happened. 2 years after we moved in, my mother met David at her job. David was a manager at the insurance office where she worked as a secretary. He was divorced and had 3 children. Lisa was 13, Marcus was 11, and Emma was 9. I was 11 then. David seemed nice at first. He brought flowers for my mother and small gifts for me. He spoke softly and smiled often. My mother had been sad for so long after my father died. Seeing her happy again made me happy too. They got married when I was 12. David, Lisa, Marcus, and Emma moved into our house with my mother, my grandfather, and me. The house felt crowded but alive with voices and footsteps. My grandfather was getting older. His hands shook when he tried to drink his morning coffee. When I was 14, he got very sick. The doctors said his heart was failing. He died peacefully in his sleep on a Sunday morning in March. I loved my grandfather deeply. He taught me how to use his tools and how to fix broken things. After his funeral, I felt lost. That was when things began to change. David's ex-wife, Patricia, started visiting more often. She would come to pick up the children and stay for dinner. She would rearrange things in the kitchen and suggest new paint colors for the living room. Patricia was loud where my mother was quiet. She was demanding where my mother was gentle. She had opinions about everything. David seemed different when she was around. He became more confident, more willing to make decisions about our house. 6 months after my grandfather died, Patricia moved in permanently. She said David needed help managing 3 teenagers and that my mother worked too much to handle everything. My mother agreed because she wanted to keep the peace. Patricia immediately began changing things. She painted over the soft blue walls my mother loved. She moved my grandfather's wooden furniture to the garage and bought new plastic furniture instead. She threw away the handmade quilts my grandmother had sewn and replaced them with store-bought blankets. When I asked about my grandfather's things, Patricia said we needed to modernize. She said old things collected dust and made the house look poor. My mother said nothing. She seemed to shrink a little more each day. Patricia also had ideas about chores. She made a list and posted it on the refrigerator. I was responsible for cleaning the bathrooms, doing the laundry, and preparing breakfast every morning before school. Lisa, Marcus, and Emma had smaller tasks like taking out trash or loading the dishwasher. When I asked why my chores were bigger, Patricia said I was the oldest and needed to learn responsibility. Lisa was actually 2 years older than me, but she was busy with her social life. Marcus played sports and needed time to practice. Emma was too young for heavy work. By the time I was 16, I was doing most of the cooking and cleaning. Patricia said my mother worked long hours and deserved a rest when she came home. I worked part-time at a grocery store after school, but I still had to come home and make dinner for everyone. Patricia never asked Lisa, Marcus, or Emma to help more. When I complained, she said I was being selfish. She said families help each other and that I should be grateful to have a roof over my head. My mother watched all of this happen, but said nothing. When I tried to talk to her about it, she said Patricia was trying her best, and that blended families were complicated. She asked me to be patient and understanding. The worst part was how Patricia treated my memories of my father and grandfather. She packed away all the photographs and put them in boxes in the attic. She said the house needed to reflect our current family, not the past. When I protested, she said I was being dramatic and that holding on to dead people was unhealthy. One day when I was 17, I found Patricia throwing away my grandfather's tools. I ran outside and pulled them from the garbage bin. She followed me and started yelling that I was a hoarder and that the garage needed space for more important things. She grabbed the toolbox from my hands and threw it back in the garbage. Some of the tools scattered on the ground. I picked them up, crying, and she stood there watching with her arms crossed. She said I needed therapy to deal with my attachment issues. David came home while this was happening. Instead of defending me, he asked me to stop causing drama. He said Patricia was just trying to organize the house and that I was making things difficult for everyone. That night, I hid my grandfather's tools under my bed. When I turned 18, Patricia announced that I needed to start paying rent. She said adults contributed to household expenses and that I had been living for free long enough. She wanted $600 per month plus money for utilities and groceries. I looked around the dinner table. Lisa was 20 and still lived at home without paying anything. Marcus was 18 and worked part-time but gave no money to the household. Emma was 16 and received an allowance every week. When I asked about this, Patricia said her children were family and that the situation was different for me. She said I was lucky they had given me a home for so long and that most people my age were already independent. Something inside me broke that day. I realized I had been treated like a servant in my own house for years. I remembered my grandfather's words about always having a home. I decided to find out what he had really meant. I searched through old papers in the attic. My grandfather had been organized and kept everything in labeled folders. I found documents about the house, insurance papers, and legal forms I did not understand. Then I found a folder with my name written on it in my grandfather's careful handwriting. Inside were papers from a lawyer's office. The documents said the house had been transferred to a trust with me as the beneficiary. When my grandfather died, the house became legally mine. I sat on the attic floor holding these papers, feeling shocked and confused. This house where I had been treated like an unwelcome guest was actually my house. It had been my house for years. I made copies of everything and put the originals back in their folder. Then I went to see the lawyer whose name was on the papers. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. He confirmed what the documents said. The house was mine. I had owned it since I was 14 years old. He explained my rights as the property owner. He helped me understand the legal process for asking unwanted occupants to leave. He was gentle but clear about what I could do. That evening, I asked David and Patricia to sit with me in the living room. My mother was working late, which happened often now. I placed the copied documents on the coffee table and explained what I had discovered. David looked at the papers and then at me. His face went pale. He said he had forgotten about the trust. He said he had not wanted to complicate things by discussing it. Patricia picked up the papers and read them slowly. Then she laughed and said the documents were probably old and invalid. She said I was being ridiculous and that children did not own houses. I told her the lawyer had confirmed everything. I said the house was legally mine and that I wanted them to move out. Patricia's face changed completely. She stood up and started shouting that I was ungrateful and selfish. She said they had raised me and taken care of me for years. She said I owed them everything. David tried to calm her down, but she pushed him away. She said I was trying to destroy the family and that she would never let me throw them out of their home. I stayed calm. I told them they had 60 days to find somewhere else to live. I said I would give them written notice the next day. Patricia screamed that she would fight me in court. She said no judge would side with a spoiled child against a loving family. She grabbed the papers and tore them into pieces, throwing them at my face. I had made many copies. The next day, I gave formal written notices to Patricia, David, Lisa, Marcus, and Emma. The notices explained that they were living in my house without permission and that they had 2 months to leave. Patricia refused to believe I was serious. She told her friends and family that I was having a mental breakdown. She said I was dangerous and unstable. She called my mother at work and cried about how I was threatening the family. My mother came home early that day. She looked tired and confused. She asked me to explain what was happening. When I showed her the legal documents, she began to cry. She said she had not known about the trust and that she felt guilty for letting Patricia treat me badly. But my mother also asked me to reconsider. She said families should forgive each other and work things out. She said kicking everyone out would destroy relationships that could never be repaired. I told my mother she could stay. The house was big enough for both of us, but I would not change my mind about the others. When the 60 days passed and no one had made plans to leave, I filed eviction papers with the court. Patricia hired a lawyer and tried to fight the eviction. She claimed I was mentally unfit to own property. She said David had been supporting me financially and deserved to stay in the house. But the law was clear. The house was mine. They had no lease and no legal right to live there. The judge ordered them to leave within 30 days. Marcus was the first to go. He packed his things and moved in with friends. He said he did not want to be part of the drama anymore. He got a job at a restaurant and seemed relieved to be independent. Emma cried for days and said I was ruining her life. She begged me to let her finish high school while living in the house. I said she could visit whenever she wanted, but she had to live somewhere else. Patricia's sister agreed to take Emma until she graduated. Lisa called me terrible names and said she would never forgive me. She moved back to her mother's hometown to live with relatives. She posted angry messages about me on social media until I blocked her accounts. David tried to convince me to let Patricia stay. He said she had nowhere else to go and that divorce would be expensive and complicated. He said I was being cruel to someone who had tried to be a mother to me. I reminded David of how Patricia had treated me for years. I told him about the chores, the insults, and the way she had erased my father and grandfather from the house. I said she had never tried to be my mother. She had only tried to erase me. David looked ashamed then. He said he had not realized how bad things had gotten. He said he had been focused on keeping everyone happy and had failed to protect me. Patricia was the last to leave. She refused to pack until the sheriff came to escort her out. She sat in the living room crying loudly and calling me heartless. She said I would regret destroying the family and that I would end up alone and miserable. On her last day, she looked at me with pure hatred. She said I was just like my grandfather, selfish and cold. She said she hoped I would be happy in my empty house with no one to love me. After she left, the house felt enormous and quiet. My mother and I walked through the rooms together, looking at the damage Patricia had done over the years. Holes in the walls where she had hung her decorations, scratches on the wooden floors from her furniture, paint covering the beautiful woodwork my grandfather had crafted by hand. My mother helped me restore some of what had been lost. We found my grandfather's furniture in the garage and brought it back inside. We repainted the walls the colors my family had chosen. We hung the old photographs again. David moved out a month later. He rented a small apartment across town and filed for divorce from Patricia. He visits sometimes and brings groceries or helps with yard work. He says he is trying to make up for the years when he failed to be a real father to me. Now it is just my mother and me in the house my grandfather built. She quit one of her jobs and seems happier than she has been in years. We cook dinner together and watch old movies in the evenings. The house feels peaceful again, but I also feel sad sometimes. I think about what family means and whether I made the right choice. I wonder if there was another way to solve the problem without breaking everything apart. I know I had the legal right to evict them. I know they treated me badly and took advantage of my kindness for years. But I also know that my actions destroyed relationships that can never be repaired. Lisa, Marcus, and Emma will always remember me as the person who threw them out of their home. Patricia will always hate me. David will always feel guilty about what happened. Sometimes I wonder if my grandfather would be proud of what I did or disappointed that I could not find a way to keep the family together. He valued kindness and forgiveness as much as he valued justice and fairness. The house is mine now, legally and completely. I have the peace and respect I always wanted, but I also have the weight of knowing that I chose my own happiness over family unity. I think I made the right choice, but it was not an easy choice, and I will carry the consequences of that choice for the rest of my life. The house that my grandfather built is quiet now. It is mine, and it is safe, and it is home. But it is also a reminder that sometimes doing the right thing for yourself means breaking the hearts of others. I am still learning how to live with that truth. Update: it has been 4 months since Patricia left. The house feels different now. Not just emptier, but somehow lighter. The weight of constant tension has lifted, leaving space for new memories to form. My mother and I have established new routines. We cook dinner together and watch old movies in the evenings. The house feels peaceful again. We planted new flowers in the garden, where Patricia destroyed my mother's roses. My mother chose lavender to replace what was lost, and I added marigolds that remind me of my grandfather's favorite tie. The physical repairs to the house are nearly complete. We've patched the holes in the walls where Marcus punched through in anger before leaving. We repainted the closet door where Patricia wrote those horrible words. We replaced the television that Lisa smashed on the floor. Each repair feels like reclaiming another piece of our home. My stepfather has been seeing a therapist, which I think is good. He visits once a week, usually bringing groceries or offering to mow the lawn. These visits are still awkward, filled with pauses and careful words. He apologizes often, usually when we're alone. I knew it was wrong, he told me last week as we replaced a broken kitchen cabinet hinge. I buried my head in the sand for years. His hands trembled slightly as he held the screwdriver. I felt like a coward. I didn't contradict him. The truth is complicated. I love my stepfather, but I'm still angry with him for not protecting me, for watching as Patricia treated me like a servant in my own home, for standing by as she erased my father's and grandfather's memories from our lives. When I told him this, tears filled his eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, he said. Maybe ever. But I want you to know I'm trying to be better now. Sometimes I wonder if trying is enough, but I also remember what my grandfather taught me about second chances. Last month, Emma called me. Her voice sounded small on the phone, uncertain. She asked if she could visit sometime. She said she missed her old room, her school friends. I hesitated, remembering how she had joined Patricia in mocking me sometimes, how she had claimed I was ruining her life. Why do you want to visit? I asked her directly. There was a long pause before she answered. I think I was wrong about a lot of things, she said finally. I believed what my mom told me about you. But some of the things she said, they don't match what I saw. We arranged for her to visit on a Saturday when my mother would be home too. Emma arrived looking different, quieter, less adorned with the expensive accessories Patricia always bought her. She stood awkwardly in the entryway, glancing at the walls where we had rehung family photos, including ones of my father and grandfather that Patricia had banished to the attic. The house looks nice, she said, touching the wooden banister my grandfather had carved. More like it used to. We had tea in the kitchen. Emma told me about living with her aunt, about starting at a new school. She said Patricia was still angry, still talking about fighting the eviction, even though the case was closed. Then she asked something that surprised me. Do you think I could come back? Not to live permanently, but maybe for weekends sometimes? My aunt's place is really small, and she trailed off, looking embarrassed. I thought about all the times Emma had watched silently as Patricia made me clean her bathroom or wash her clothes. But I also remembered that she was only 16, that she had been raised by a mother who taught her entitlement was normal. I told her I would think about it. Marcus has not contacted me directly, but my stepfather says he's doing well. He got promoted at the restaurant where he works and is taking classes at the community college. Sometimes I wonder if the eviction was actually good for him, forcing him to stand on his own feet rather than drifting through life in his bedroom with his headphones on. Lisa, however, has been less adaptable. She created a social media campaign against me, posting distorted versions of what happened, claiming I heartlessly threw them all out on the street. For weeks, I received angry messages from her friends, some containing threats. I eventually had to block dozens of accounts and make all my profiles private. Last week, I saw Lisa at the grocery store. She was with Patricia, both pushing shopping carts full of the expensive brands they always preferred. When they spotted me, Patricia grabbed Lisa's arm and steered her down another aisle, whispering furiously. Lisa looked over her shoulder at me, her expression a mixture of anger and something else, perhaps shame. Patricia has not given up her campaign against me. My stepfather says she tells anyone who will listen that I am mentally unstable, that I manipulated the legal system, that I destroyed their family. She still drives by the house sometimes, slowing down to stare at our front door. Once I found her sitting in her car across the street, just watching. When I approached, she sped away. These encounters leave me shaky and anxious. I'm sleeping a bit better, but I still jump at loud noises. My mother suggested I talk to someone professional about what happened, and I've started seeing a counselor who specializes in family trauma. In therapy, I'm learning that what Patricia did was a form of emotional abuse, that the way she isolated me, gave me disproportionate chores, belittled my feelings, and destroyed my possessions. These weren't just normal family conflicts. My counselor says many abuse victims struggle with guilt after escaping, wondering if they overreacted or if they should have tried harder to make things work. You were protecting yourself, she told me in our last session. Sometimes the only way to stop abuse is to create distance between yourself and the abuser. I think about this often as I move through the rooms of my grandfather's house. My house. I think about the word home and what it really means. Is it just walls and a roof? Or is it safety, respect, and love? My mother seems happier now. She sings sometimes while cooking, something I hadn't heard her do since before Patricia moved in. She has started painting again, setting up an easel in the sunroom, where the light is best. Her canvases show landscapes from her childhood, places she visited with my stepfather before he died. When I asked why she stopped painting during those years with Patricia, she said she had felt too tired, too drained. It was like living under a storm cloud, she explained, mixing blues and grays on her palette. Everything took so much energy, just getting through each day, trying to keep the peace. There wasn't anything left for creating. I understand what she means. For years, my energy went to surviving each day, to enduring Patricia's moods, to completing the endless chores, to protecting what few possessions and memories I had left. Now I have space to think about what I want from life. I've enrolled in college courses, something Patricia always said was a waste of money. I'm studying architecture, inspired by my grandfather's craftsmanship and my father's trade skills. When I told my stepfather about this choice, he cried and hugged me for the first time in years. Sometimes I dream about Patricia. In these dreams, she is standing in my bedroom doorway, watching me sleep, her face twisted with anger. I wake up with my heart pounding, checking that my door is locked. My counselor says these nightmares are normal, that they will fade with time and healing. Last week, a letter arrived from Patricia's lawyer. It claims she had left personal items of significant value in the house and demanded their return. My own lawyer advised that anything left behind after the eviction legally belonged to me now, but suggested I consider returning truly personal items as a gesture of goodwill. I spent a day going through the few boxes of Patricia's things we had stored in the garage. Most were household items she had purchased after moving in, plastic decorations, mass-produced art prints, cheap vases. Nothing of real value. But at the bottom of one box, I found a small album of photographs. They showed Patricia with her children when they were very young, before she met David. In these photos, she looked different, softer, happier, less harsh. I sent the album back to her through my lawyer, along with a note saying these were the only personal items I had found. I don't know if this small act of kindness will make any difference, but it felt like something my grandfather would have done. The garden is flourishing now, the new plants taking root where the damaged ones were removed. My mother and I are planning to add a small vegetable patch next spring. David has offered to build raised beds for us, saying he remembers how much I enjoyed helping my grandfather grow tomatoes when I was younger. These small acts of rebuilding feel significant. Sometimes I walk through the house at night, touching the wooden railings my grandfather crafted, feeling the smooth surfaces under my fingers. I imagine him watching over us, pleased that his gift has finally served its purpose, to provide a true home for his family. I know I had the legal right to evict them. I know they treated me badly and took advantage of my kindness for years, but I also know that my actions destroyed relationships that can never be repaired. Yet new relationships are forming in the spaces left behind. My relationship with my mother has deepened as we've shared our experiences of those difficult years. My stepfather and I are slowly building a more honest connection, one based on accountability and growth rather than avoidance. Even Emma and I are cautiously exploring what a healthier sibling relationship might look like. 4 months ago, I thought evicting Patricia and her family was the end of a story. Now I understand it was just the beginning of healing, of rebuilding, of learning who I am when I'm not defined by someone else's cruelty. I am still learning how to live with that truth, but now I'm doing it in a home where I belong, surrounded by people who respect me, with the freedom to shape my own future. My grandfather's greatest gift wasn't the house itself. It was the chance to reclaim my life and create something new from what was broken. And that is worth everything.